welcome to my podcast. So, I got a chance to see the movie Thunderbolts in the theater. I saw it opening day, the Thursday that it opened. I didn't really have any specific expectations, and I have to say that Thunderbolts beat those expectations. It is actually a very good movie. Like, very good. Maybe not even in my MCU top 5, but definitely the best post-Endgame movie after Guardians of the Galaxy 3. As far as pure entertainment value, I'd probably put Deadpool and Wolverine above it, but it's going for something way different than other Marvel movies, and I really appreciate it. It's got A24 vibes, I want to say, like everything, everywhere, all at once vibes. Like, it's not about a multiverse, but it's about depression, and the way it deals with that depression, and the way the characters interact is a little bit different than other Marvel films. Like, it's got the tongue-in-cheek stuff and the quippy punchlines. It does this thing, and I'm not actually going to start the conversation with Thunderbolts, but I just want to point this one thing out. It does this thing that I guess is an MCU thing, but it stood out in this viewing of an MCU movie to me, where the scene tags, where the character does, says something funny and then has throwaway dialogue after that goes into the scene transition. It does that continually, and it really makes an effort to have the dialogue, even though it's quippy, be naturalistic between the two characters. There's a lot of scene partner conversations because it wants to be intimate, because it's about depression. Like, of all the characters, even though the overarching story is about depression as the villain. But before we get into that, before we get into Thunderbolts the movie, I want to talk about the history of some of these characters. The Thunderbolts team themselves, their history in comics. So around the turn of the century, around the year 2000, a little bit, maybe 1998 it happened. Marvel was trying to generate some new audience, and comic book companies do this periodically now, where they do alternate lines, spin-off lines, that represent their whole universe, their whole line in a different universe, to try to update it for today. Because if you just do the regular main continuity, you have 60 years, 80 years of history for a given comic book company that you have to deal with. So they make an effort to do these spin-off lines. And Marvel's first big effort to do that was the Heroes Reborn spin-off, which came before the Ultimate Universe lines. And in Heroes Reborn, the main Marvel heroes were fighting a composite Xavier Magneto villain called Onslaught, who was the big bad, and to defeat him, they had to basically go into him, which created another universe through the power of Franklin Richards. Doesn't matter. That spin-off universe took away all the main characters from the Marvel Universe and actually put them in a different universe, and so there were no heroes left. There were some heroes left, but to try to come in and fill the space left by the absent heroes, a plan was created to introduce a hero group called the Thunderbolts. And the Thunderbolts had a big splashy introduction and brand new hero names. Who are these people? And then at the end of the first issue, it's revealed that they are actually all supervillains who are running a long-term scam or scheme created by Baron Helmut Zemo, who was posing as Citizen V. So in the build-up to this movie coming out, we all thought that Baron Zemo would be part of this Thunderbolts movie, because the Thunderbolts is the brainchild of Helmut Zemo. And then all these other classic B-tier supervillains took on different identities to become the superheroes known as the Thunderbolts. His scheme came to fruition eventually, and the Thunderbolts book evolved into something different over the course of time. I did not follow it, so I don't know what that something different is. I do know that most of the villains went back into villainy. Some of them are anti-heroes or kind of reformed. Not Helmut Zemo, because he's a Nazi. Yeah, it was an interesting book, and I read it at the time because Mark Bagley, who was one of the great artists of the 1990s and aughts. He was the Ultimate Spider-Man artist. He was the New Warriors artist, which is how I came to enjoy Mark Bagley. I think his art's fantastic. It's very kinetic. His characters are live. Anyway, I was a Thunderbolts fan just because of Mark Bagley. So I read maybe a few issues of the book, but I didn't follow it. But the other main influence for the Thunderbolts is the character of the Sentry. And I was a Sentry fan. He's another Superman analog character. At the turn of the century, there were lots of Superman analog characters they introduced. It was all about deconstructing Superman for some reason at that period of time. And when I say turn of the century, I'm talking about the year 2000, which is unfortunately the turn of the century, and I was alive at the time, yeah. The Sentry, Marvel had this idea that it would create a character that, through retroactive continuity, actually existed through the Silver Age of Marvel Comics. And so in creating this book that was a modern grimdark, I think you want to call it, maybe more thoughtful than that, but kind of a grimdark book, they would also have these flashback issues and flashback scenes that were done in Silver Age style, both narratively and artistically. And the Sentry was powerful enough that he made the world forget that he ever existed, but he was an integral part of the Silver Age continuity retroactively. So he was an important figure in the Hulk's life, in Peter Parker's life, in the Fantastic Four's life. And yeah, he was a Superman analog, but he had a dark secret in that he was actually a schizophrenic. He had a mental health issue. And because of that, even though he manifested in his life as Robert Reynolds' everyday schlub, his alter ego was the Sentry, who was basically the Golden God, the Great Guardian, was basically Superman. He was good and brave and forthright, but his main villain, a creature known as the Void, we come to find that the Void is actually, and this is a spoiler for the events of the movie, so if you don't want to know about this, watch the movie first and then come back. But the Void is actually an alter ego of the Sentry. They all exist. Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, and the Void all exist in the person of Robert Reynolds. And the way they've played with that over time is very inconsistent. You also have the fact that Robert Reynolds not only is Superman powerful, but he can also manipulate reality. So he's more than Superman powerful. He's got kind of godlike abilities, which they've presented inconsistently. So even the character of the Sentry, as one of those personalities, has not been presented consistently. Sometimes he's Superman, sometimes he is straight up a crazy person, an agoraphobe, somebody who is scared of his own shadow with all this power, sometimes just a weapon in human form. But in that initial run, that initial limited series, he was presented as a direct Superman analog, with the Void being the most evil creature imaginable, who was also all-powerful, even more powerful than the Sentry himself. And the reason that the Sentry had made the world forget that he existed was because he found out that he was also the Void, and in that process he found out that any good action he took in the world, the Void would balance it by doing something horrific. So if he saved 1 million people, the Void would kill 1 million people. Hurricane, whatever, the Void's powers are pretty ridiculous. So they had that initial run. Man, that was a good series. And then they were like, what do we do with this character? So they kept trying to reintroduce the series, the Sentry, over and over again in different books, kind of rewriting his origin just a little bit, tweaking things. Robert Reynolds ended up being and I think this was kind of in the first limited series, but they kept changing it a little bit because once again, the Sentry kind of rewrites reality with his existence. He was a drug-addicted teen who was looking for a high when he found this formula created by a government-contracted professor who was trying to, and this happens often in the MCU especially, but in Marvel Comics, recreate the super soldier serum that made Captain America Captain America. And this one was supposed to be 100,000 times as powerful. Robert Reynolds was trying to get high. He broke in the professor's lab, drank the formula, powers of the Sentry. Also part of his origin, he had like a super dog, watchdog, like Superman does with Krypto. He had a sidekick, which came back into the continuity later. But his history in Marvel Comics is kind of a mess, and I think that's probably why they killed him off, because they didn't know what to do with him. He was ripped in half by a godlike entity in one of the big Summer Story runs. It doesn't actually make sense because of how powerful the Sentry is. Maybe he just wanted to die, and he's, at this point in time, not the only Superman analog running around Marvel Comics, because there's a bunch of them. There's Hyperion, who is even more directly a Superman analog. There's Blue Marvel, who is less directly Superman analog, but also that kind of greatest hero on Earth, our last line of defense kind of hero. And so I guess the Sentry became superfluous, maybe. Anyway, that is Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, and so those are the two influences on this movie, the Thunderbolts. So when you have this team of villains who are posing as superheroes, and you have this schizophrenic Superman, how do you mix those things to make a movie? You mix them pretty well, evidently, because, as I said, the Thunderbolts is very successful. It's an exploration of depression. It's Yelena Belova's depression, who is Florence Pugh's version of the Black Widow, the younger adopted sister of Natasha Romanoff, who we met in Black Widow and who appeared again in the Hawkeye TV series. And she is the center of the movie. She's the main character, even though it's an ensemble film. She is the heart and soul of the movie. And Florence Pugh, as Yelena Belova, is of course great. She was actually the magic of the Black Widow film, which it should have been Scarlett Johansson, but it was definitely Florence Pugh. She is charming. She is believable emotionally. When she feels something, you feel it too. And yeah, just does a great job. And so it starts with her depression, but as it introduces new characters, it introduces them just exploring their shortcomings and their depression, culminating in the introduction of Robert Reynolds and his level of depression actually destroying the world. It doesn't get to that level, but that's functionally what it's trying to do. And when Robert Reynolds realizes his level of power and pulls the other characters into his depression, like literally manifesting his depression in a way that you're like, where's Doctor Strange? He should be involved in this scenario, because he basically destroys the people of New York City. He turns them into shadows as they are absorbed into his expanding realm of depression, locked inside his depression. It's like a Doctor Strange style event, but no Doctor Strange, no Falcon, nobody else, just the Thunderbolts, who are all paramilitary guys. Some of them are super soldiers, some of them aren't. You do have one person who can do Ghost, can phase, like Kitty Pryde, and so she has an actual power. But their level of power, even with Bucky, who is a super soldier plus having that vibranium arm, their level of power is nothing like the kind of team that would come together to combat a Robert Reynolds. They did something interesting with this, and I have to say kudos to who wrote the screenplay? Eric Pearson, Joanna Callow, director Jake Schreier, who I have never heard of before, but they did a good job. Very solid. A little bit of it is workmanlike, but just in this presentation of the story, it's classic Marvel, and then you get the A24 spin of it being an internally focused story, and of course the Marvel charm. They're doing something special here. Kudos to the team that put together Thunderbolts. I enjoyed it tremendously, and the action's good. You get the return of Wyatt Russell's John Walker. The U.S. agent is what he's known as in the comics. I don't think he's ever gotten a name in the MCU as of yet. Louis Pullman is the Sentry. Robert Reynolds was actually supposed to be Stephen Yeun, and I would have loved to see that. When they find the Sentry character, I guess they find him, or Robert Reynolds' character, they find him in Malaysia. They say his origins are in Malaysia, and I guess that's a holdover from Stephen Yeun as the Sentry. And while Louis Pullman does a good job, man, I would have loved to have seen Stephen Yeun as this character. But no, good job all around. Very enjoyable. In the post-credit scenes, there is a connection to the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe that they have not had in a while, and it's hilarious and charming in a way that calls back to a We're Back Baby level. Like, for me, it was never gone, but the connectivity of these films definitely was gone, and the Thunderbolts kind of returns that. I only have good things to say. It's not like Sinners level of great. Like, when I was sitting there watching it, I didn't feel like, oh, this is something I have to see in the theater, but I did feel like, man, this is fun, and I'm glad that I'm watching it. One more standout, two more call-outs. David Harbour as Red Guardian. He's the comic relief, but he also does the touching Papa Bear fatherly things very well, and he's a decent action star. He's so goofy that you're like, why is he here? He's there because he's powerful, and he is the Papa Bear as well. So the power levels granted by the super soldier serum in the MCU are really inconsistent and kind of ridiculous. Are these people peak human? They're obviously not peak human. They're more than that in the MCU as shown. But every time you see the super soldiers do something, they're more powerful than they were the last time. These guys are stronger than Marvel Comics Spider-Man at this point. They're probably in like the 20 tons range, maybe even stronger than that. And some of the damage that they're taking is ridiculous, which I guess makes it even more insane that the Sentry, who you don't really get to see how powerful he actually is, but these people are ants as compared to the Sentry as presented in this movie. But yeah, kudos to David Harbour, and then big kudos to Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who is an old S.H.I.E.L.D. character, the James Bond comic book era of the 1960s. She's good. She is a straight-up villain. Like, she's part of the regular MC, like, she's the modern Nick Fury, basically. Realpolitik. The ends justify the means kind of character. But she is just straight-up openly evil. She does not care. Nick Fury had some empathy, and you could understand where he was coming from, but Julie Louis-Dreyfus is kind of gleefully evil bold-faced in her realpolitik, and it cuts a little bit close to home because she is very close to somebody who is actually in politics right now, and it's depressing. Damn it. It is super sad. Well, I guess the whole movie's depressing, so that falls in line, but she's somebody that you want to see get her comeuppance one day. I doubt that she will because she is part of the establishment and one of the mainline characters, so you'll probably find out that her ends justify the means philosophy was at least partially justified at some point. Whatever. But she's good. She's good at this. Of course she is. She's been around for a long time and she's a great actress. So just successful all around. I had a good time, like all the way through. I don't have anything bad to say about the movie. There are some decisions made where I'm like, that's a comic booky thing, and it kind of steals from the emotional impact. But it's also a fun entertainment movie, so you just go with it. If you're expecting a Suicide Squad-like experience, because that's what the commercials sold us, that's not exactly what this is. These guys are not villains. They're all like government operatives. And they're not explicitly trying to do anything evil beyond just doing their job, which is evil in itself, but like real-world evil. The ends justify the means, kind of like Valentina. They don't care. They're just people doing a job. Government hitmen or soldiers, they all have a lot of blood on their hands. It kind of is an is-what-it-is situation, and you accept that and move forward. And by the end of the movie, you have an established team. And I guess the tension of the movie is whether or not, and they play this over and over again in a way that is kind of on its nose. Will they betray or leave each other because they're all lone wolves? Each character is a lone wolf. And then you're surprised that because of the situation they're in, they decide it's better to work together until they can get out of this situation. And it's actually Yelena Belova's kindness to Robert that allows them to gain any level of victory at all. So even though there's a large-scale problem, the solution is very small-scale, and it's just about being there for somebody. It was relevant to me because I lost a friend who suffered from hardcore depression, and his birthday was around the launch of Thunderbolts, and so that was in my mind. And I thought that the way that they handled depression and the fact that you need people to be there for you was very thoughtful and fairly well done. I did the everything everywhere all at once analogy. Also in the aesthetic presentation, some of the stuff is very A24. Does it reach the heights of that movie? No, it doesn't. But it's also not trying to. It's more of a popcorn movie, and Everything Everywhere All at Once was a popcorn movie, but this is more of a general audience movie than that was. So I appreciate what they did here. Great job. Kudos all around. Hopefully the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a contiguous thing, like watching a series of expensive TV shows, is back. People don't like that. I know people want it to be over, but if you go see Thunderbolts, you'll appreciate that it's not over. It makes me even more excited for Fantastic Four. I was already excited for Fantastic Four. I'm not fooling anybody, but yes, now I'm even more excited for Fantastic Four. This might end up being a great movie summer. I thought I was done with movies, but they keep pulling me back in. Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next. I think Tom Cruise's movie, The Last Mission Impossible, is the next big summer movie. And a lot of people didn't enjoy Dead Reckoning Part 1 because it's a two-parter. I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see what Tom Cruise does with this big finale. The man knows movies, and this is going to be a good summer. And I guess that's it. I'm glad I could bang out that episode. I didn't really sit down. I'm trying to be more off the cuff and still be good at being off the cuff, because when I script an episode, it's a really good episode, but people enjoy hearing things be extemporaneous because they don't like when things sound robotic. I do. I like when somebody does a script, but regular people who are not me enjoy when people are being more extemporaneous. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I have this habit where I roll into repeating the same adverbs and adjectives over and over again, and I'm trying to get away from that. My mind gets stuck on something. I can't get away from it, but if I do this more, if I do the extemporaneous thing more, then maybe I'll stop doing that because I am fairly sesquipedalian and I know a lot of words and they don't come to mind when I'm doing the extemporaneous off-the-cuff recording. But if I do it more often, then maybe they will. All right, so that is genuinely it. That is it. And as always, thanks for listening. You can catch me online at all the places as Johnathanblade on Threads, on Blue Sky, on Instagram. I'm Also, now sharing these podcast episodes on YouTube because YouTube is a more universal place to access this kind of content. So in addition to all the podcatcher spaces that you would normally catch this in, you can catch Johnathanblade, the Elder Blerd on YouTube going forward. I'm also publishing some back episodes from my handle as Johnathanblade, so be on the lookout for those. Not everyone, but just some fun ones, some ones that I thought were very interesting. I'm publishing those to YouTube as well. We'll catch you in the next episode, and as always, thanks for listening.